Hello students, Mr. Jen here. Welcome to Chapter 12, Lesson 1, Part 1. There's a lot in this lesson, so I split it up into two lessons. At the end, we have a little forum post, a discussion post, a little bit of writing, nothing crazy. Let's move on to what we have. Our essential question, what was life like for your Joe Schmo Roman? So today's an interesting lesson where we hit a topic we cover in most chapters. What was the daily life for the Joe Schmo Roman? What did they do? What was family like? What did the women do? What did they do for fun? As we make today's trip through Roman life, think about the similarities and differences, not only with the other civilizations we have studied so far, but with our culture as well. American culture. For example, we may not have gladiatorial games, but we do have a lot of competitive sports. And MMA itself right now, mixed martial arts, is, it's kind of getting huge. It's kind of like the modern gladiators. But if you think about it, you think about the Coliseum. We have, PNC Park and Heinz Field here in Pittsburgh and whatever a hole in the ground the Philadelphia plays in. I'm jagging you, Philly guys. Kind of. Let's get into the lesson. Alright, much like today, the vast empire of Rome had urban centers and agricultural areas. Roman cities were the cultural centers of the Roman civilization. Among the most cultured of cities were those found on the actual Italian peninsula. Rome itself was a huge planned city of over 1 million people. It has square street plan, nice 90-degree angles on the corners. The emperor lived in a large palace on top of a hill. At the bottom of the hill was the Forum, which served as a public meeting spot, market, and social gathering location, much like Greek agoras we learned about before Christmas, before winter break. Surrounding the Forum were temples and other public buildings. The wealthy folk of Rome lived on the hills with big walled-off houses called villas, typically with an atrium or courtyard in the middle. Some of the wealthy even had second homes, like off in the countryside, kind of like now. So, yeah, they lived in sweet villas in the city. Now, the less rich folk were artisans and shopkeepers. However, most Romans were poor. At least the Romans in Rome. They lived in cramped wooden buildings, often 6 or even 7 stories tall. If they caught fire, oh boy, what a mess. Garbage collected in the streets, crime was bad at night. Basically, being poor in Rome meant miserable living conditions. Many of the poor folk performed unskilled labor or had no jobs at all. To keep these masses of poor Romans happy, keep the masses from revolting, the political leaders of Rome gave them what is called bread and circuses. Still kind of a term used today. It's sort of a distraction, if you will. Basically, they would offer free entertainment and throw out bread to the crowds at like the Coliseum, sort of like they launched the t-shirt cannon now. Imagine the t-shirt cannon, but a lot more t-shirts, and the t-shirts are bread. They would throw bread to the people in the Coliseum that would come to watch the free shows. Lesson there to be learned. Don't let them do that to you. I put this sweet quote in here. You can take a look at it. It kind of talks about what they were doing there. Now, among these free entertainment shows were chariot races at the Circus Maximus, or gladiatorial games, at the Colosseum. A gladiator was essentially a fighter that fought to the death against other gladiators and even animals for the entertainment of others. They were typically slaves, prisoners, or criminals, but being a good gladiator gained a lot of respect and even perhaps freedom. So imagine the WWE, but it was real and they killed each other. It was gladiators right there. See, they were armored. It was professional fights to the death. Pretty brutal. So, let's move on to the Roman family. As is the norm for many civilizations we study, if not all, family was the center of Roman culture. Man was in charge, and in earlier Rome, families were often quite large, but as time passed, family size sort of got smaller, and divorce became more commonplace. Husbands kept a close eye on their wives. Education was prevalent among the upper class for both boys and girls, with the initial education being the responsibility of the father. Once older, a girl's education would stay at home, but a young man might go to school, might be educated at a school. Boys became men at the age of 15, when our culture is more like 18. Girls became women once they were married, which could be as young as 14. Boys were usually married a little older, which tells me that they were usually like 18-year-olds marrying like 14-year-olds. Seems weird to us, but at the time, that's how they rolled. The role of women, something we always talk about. Women of Rome were not the worst off of the societies that we have studied, but their station did change depending on their economic status, as is usual. They did not have the rights of full citizens, and men were in charge generally of the family, but women did have a heavy influence on a husband's decisions. The wives of emperors actually gained power over time. For example, Empress Juliana ran the empire while her husband, Septimus, was away fighting, so female empress filling in. Wealthy women in the 100s AD Rome could own land, so they gained power over time. Rights, if you will. They could own land, sell land, and run a business. They were in charge of the household, like maintaining the home. But in the wealthy families, the slaves did all the work. She was just kind of like the foreman of the slaves. But that left the lady of the house free to study the arts and read and do things like that and go out. With less money, women had less freedom. They spent their time actually running the household, cooking and cleaning, things like that, and even helping their husbands with the work or running the shop or whatever. They were free to leave by themselves to go to like the market and the temples or the baths. Some women even served as priestesses, hairdressers, and even doctors. Slavery. Let's bump on to slavery. Slavery had been a part of Rome since the very beginning. Slaves did a variety of tasks. They worked in households, fields, mines, and built roads and aqueducts. They really did it all, any labor that needed done. Many Greek slaves were well educated and served as, say, the artisans and even teachers in Rome. As the empire expanded, there were more and more slaves. By 100 BC, 40% of the population of the Italian peninsula was slaves. Crazy. Regardless of what they did, slave life was generally miserable, and with so many slaves, Rome had to deal with slave uprisings from time to time. For example, in 73 BC, a gladiator by the name of Spartacus led a slave rebellion. Him and a bunch of other gladiators escaped like the gladiator school and went on a tear and recruited more slaves to be part of the rebellion. His followers reached a number of 70,000. They basically sought to reach the Alps and escape the Italian peninsula to their homelands, but the rebellion was eventually crushed by the Roman army, and thousands of rebels were crucified. So this is a pretty long lesson already, with much to go, so we're going to stop here and pick up with Roman religion, philosophy, science, and the arts tomorrow. Down here at the bottom, I've got a little extra X or something for you. I call it Mr. Young's Movie Corner. Basically, if there's a cool movie relevant to what we're talking about, I'll let you know. Maybe you can check it out. So there's a sweet movie from 1960 called Spartacus. It's all about Spartacus and his slave rebellion. At the end of the movie, there's this famous scene. It's a famous scene in cinema when the Romans have defeated Spartacus and his army, and they're trying to figure out who Spartacus is. There's all these slaves there. They all kind of look the same. And they go, all right, if you surrender and tell us who Spartacus is, we will not crucify you all. You will just be left, we'll kill Spartacus, and the rest of you will just go back to being slaves. And none of them will tell them who Spartacus is, and they all go, I am Spartacus. And then the next guy says, I am Spartacus. It's a pretty cool scene. And it's like from 1960, so there's nothing too violent in there. It's all like rated G. Cool. It's pretty cool. Check it out if you have an extra, 1 minute and 27 seconds. The whole movie from 1960, I think I saw it was on YouTube for free, but it's pretty long. But, hey, if you're looking to kill some time this weekend, check out YouTube. Watch Spartacus. It's a famous movie. Alright, for today's assignment, we're keeping it simple. Please answer the following the following question using complete sentences. What of what we learned today surprised you the most about Roman life and why? I will post first as an example. So for me, I wrote that, I've taught this lesson many times, but each year I'm still surprised by something that I forgot. For example, the fact that 40% of the population of the Italian peninsula consisted of slaves is staggering. They had to know they were going to have a lot of problems with that many slaves. Alright, so that's it. We'll pick up with the next part of Roman culture tomorrow. Alright, have a wonderful day. Mr. Yund out.